Welcome to the presentation of a lecture from Gnostic Radio, a free public service from the Gnostic tradition of Samael Aun Weor. Gnosis is the root wisdom of all the world's great religions. Gnosis is a universal teaching of practical science, whose goal is absolute liberation from suffering and the complete development of the human being. This lecture is one of many available by free download or podcast. The hundreds of hours of lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. Each Saturday, Gnostic Radio broadcasts live. The live lecture is accompanied by an online chat, allowing listeners to read additional explanations related to the lecture and providing an opportunity to ask questions of the speaker. To learn how to participate or tune into our continuous web broadcast, visit our website for more information at gnosticradio.org. Gnostic Radio is made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. For more information or to make a donation, visit our website at gnosticradio.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy. In the previous lecture, we talked about the myth of Persephone and how this Greek symbol relates to our psychological scenario. Persephone, as you recall, is a Greek goddess, the daughter of Demeter and Zeus, who, because she becomes entranced by a flower, is captured by Hades and taken into the underworld. So that flower, called Narcissus, represents desire. And this story represents a psychological function, something that happens in us. The story has many levels of meaning. It relates to the ancient past, but it also relates to the flow of forces and energies in our psychology, within us, within our mind, within our heart. Persephone represents the daughter of the Divine Mother, the child of the Divine Mother. That child is our soul. Persephone represents our essence, our consciousness, our very true nature. So, the understanding of the essence, to know what that is, to experience it, and to use it, is the entire point of religion. If you don't know what your essence is, if you cannot taste it, if you cannot feel it, if you cannot work with it, you're not accessing religion. You're not using religion. You're not experiencing religion. Religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to unite, to bond. And that refers to the reunion of Persephone with Demeter, the reunion of our soul, our consciousness, with its source, with its root, which we symbolize as the Divine Mother. But in reality, the Divine Mother has no form. She is a force, an intelligence, prajna, a kind of wisdom, a kind of intelligence that's beyond any concept, beyond any form. That's where our essence comes from. But this essence is just a seed, it's an embryo, it's a child, like Persephone. It's undeveloped, it's innocent. And a long time ago, that innocent consciousness encountered sensations that produced desire. And our essence, our consciousness, became hypnotized by that desire.
The whole story of that event in our evolution is very long and full of heartbreak. So instead of going into history, we need to study this as it affects us today, as it affects our modern lives, our day-to-day lives. Our essence is our very true nature. And we need to understand what that means, what the essence is. The story of Persephone on another level represents how our essence descends into a physical body and takes up manifestation. And as we explained in the previous lecture about Persephone, Hades, or Pluto, rules the lower kingdoms. That kingdom in Kabbalah is called Malkut. But it also includes the kingdoms below that, which are Klipot, or hell. The physical world, the physical body, is the kingdom of Pluto, the kingdom of Hades. It is the world of sensation. It is the lower world, separate from heaven. We don't have a heaven in our body, but we can if we work with Persephone. So what we need to know is, how do we save Persephone? How do we bring Persephone out of the darkness? That is, how do we bring our essence, our consciousness, out of the prison that it's in now? One level of meaning in the story of Persephone talks about the transmigration of souls. As you may remember, Persephone descends into the underworld, but through the narrative, eventually reaches a point at which she can escape temporarily, but has to return later. So I have 2 teas now? Thank you. Thank you. She gets a break periodically, so she's able to leave the underworld and go back to heaven. But she's not free of the lower realms. And this is because of karma, cause and effect. And this is the state or the situation that our very soul is in. We're bound here. We don't have a choice. We're bound here by laws, by cause and effect. Not by the tyranny of a God, but by the consequences of our own actions. We are here in these bodies, suffering because we produced the causes that created this. Our consciousness, our essence, became hypnotized and is still hypnotized. And that's why our suffering persists. So because of that, we are bound into the transmigration of souls, where we take up physical bodies, we have a lifetime, we die. Sometimes, if we've produced a lot of good results, our soul or our essence gets a vacation, gets a break, and is able to enjoy a period of bliss in a superior realm. This is rare nowadays, and even becoming more and more rare. In ancient times, it was common, because the souls were not so burdened with desires, with suffering. Now it's very rare. Most souls, for the last few centuries, are reborn immediately, may have a short break, or they've accrued so much karma that they don't get to take a body again at all. And that's the case that's happening now. Since the 1950s. Many of the souls that are dying don't come back because their karma is too heavy. And nature takes them to recycle them and begin a new round. But this takes thousands of years. So that process of migration is like a great spiral. And our soul is trapped in that by cause and effect. What we need to understand then is the practical method to change it. And I found a sentence in one of Samael Aun Weor's books that captures the essence of that method. And so today we're going to talk about this single line within which the entire teaching is condensed. In his book, Fundamental Education, Samael Aun Weor wrote, "A perfect equilibrium between personality and essence, the harmonious development of thought, emotion, and movement, and a revolutionary ethics are what constitute the basis of a fundamental education." This short sentence condenses the entire Gnostic teaching. But to understand it, to grasp it, you have to have studied that teaching and know what these terms are. These terms are very specific. They are not vague. They are not open for interpretation. They are extremely specific. And to understand them, you have to investigate the meaning of each of these terms. I already explained the essence. The essence is our consciousness. Essence is our soul. It is not the mind. It is not the heart. It is not the body. It is not the personality. It is beyond all of them. Our essence, our consciousness, does not need to think. It does not intellectualize. It doesn't have emotions in the way we have emotions right now. The emotions work differently in the essence. Thoughts work differently. Cognition is different. The essence is beyond mere intellect. It is beyond mere emotion as we know it. It is beyond sensation as we know it. It can experience any of them, but it is beyond them. The essence, the consciousness, simply is. It is the state of being. It is the state of existence. And this will remain elusive to your mind until you've experienced that. And you can, if you learn to meditate. In the practice of meditation, you can have experiences where you taste, you know, you feel, you experience pure essence. The Sanskrit word for that experience is samadhi. A true samadhi is an experience beyond the I, beyond the ego, beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond feelings or sentiments. In that state, you can experience thought, you can experience emotion, you can experience sensation, but they are not the thought, emotion, or sensation of the body, or the personality, or this time or age. They are experiences that are beyond time, that belong to eternity. It's something different. You may have experienced this when you've had a dream, a very rich, deep, profound dream, when you were not who you are now. And then when you come back to your physical body, you become confused. And you think, wait a minute, I'm not this person with this name and this job and this burden. Where was I in this dream? Who was I? I was somebody else. You may have been seeing and tasting a past experience, a future experience, or your real nature. What it illustrates is the maya, the illusion that is woven around us by our own past actions. So in this sentence, what we're going for is the perfect equilibrium. Perfect equilibrium is the very point of this sentence that Samael Aun Weor wrote. So let's understand what that means. The first two elements he mentions here are personality and essence. Essence is our consciousness. Personality is a mask. Each time we're born into a new body, we develop a new personality. Those of us who took bodies during the Roman Empire built a personality in the Roman Empire, a Roman personality that spoke that language, that had that culture, that had those morals, that liked the food of that time, that liked the music of that time, that liked the clothes of that time. But that was a personality that belonged then, but isn't eternal. It's temporary. That personality only lasts as long as that body lasts. And when we're born again, we build a new one. So the personality is just a mask. So all of us who are sitting and listening to this lecture have a personality. And unfortunately, most of us think the personality is our true identity. It is not. Your name, your memories, your family, your history, your culture, your tastes, your interests are personality. The color of your skin, your accent, the language you speak, your politics, your taste in clothing and food and music and all these cultural things are personality. They are temporal. They belong to time. They're not permanent. They're not eternal. They don't belong to your soul. They are not your soul. So right there we can see that the vast majority of what most people think is myself is an illusion. It isn't real. It's an illusion. It's something we build in each lifetime in order to function in a physical body and relate with others. But it's an illusion. It dies. It goes away. It's not part of the soul. It's not part of the being. We need to make that distinction because a lot of what we consider so important, that we fight with each other about, that we argue about, that we fight for, we work day and day and day to make money, to feed the personality, to get the clothes that make us fashionable and fit in, that make others admire us or envy us, to get the music, to go to the clubs, to go to the shows, to go to the movies, to have the toys and gadgets and house and car and all the things that we think we're supposed to have, which all are really meaningless, empty, pointless, especially spiritually. They have no value. But we tend to spend the majority of our lives chasing them. Even political things, even religious theories and doctrines and dogmas are personality. Many of us have been born into a religious household. We adopt that religion as the true religion, but it's personality. We go to church every week, we give our donations, but we don't move spiritually. It's just a habit. That isn't spiritual. It's personality. It's false. It's a lie. We have to distinguish between these two. But let's go further. The next passage, he says, the harmonious development of thought, emotion, and movement. These are our three brains. Thought, emotion, and movement. The three brains are just machines. We have the intellectual brain, which is where thoughts process. They are not created there. Thoughts are not created in the brain. The self is not in the brain. The self does not create thoughts. Thoughts are a matter and energy related to the fifth dimension, related to the mental body. Physically, our brain physically is the vehicle of our intellectual brain, which is a machine that is psychological. That psychological machine only transmits the contents of our mental body. That's all it does. It isn't a self. It isn't the soul. It isn't an identity. It's a machine. And we've had an intellect, we've had a brain in every one of our bodies. And in every one of our bodies, our intellect has been different. The intellect changes. It's just a little device. All it does is compare and recall. It has a certain capacity of memory, and it has a certain capacity to compare different elements, usually not very many at the same time. Our brain, intellectual brain, doesn't work at its full capacity. Emotion is related with our emotional brain. Once again, this is just a psychological transformer. It's a machine that transmits the contents of our astral body, the emotional body. In our physical body, we have our heart, our solar plexus, and organs and glands in this region that work in conjunction with the emotional brain. The emotional brain is not physical, but it uses physical matter to transmit its energy. The emotional brain receives and transmits emotional energies: love, joy, hate, anger, happiness, sadness. All the different types of feelings that we experience. Sentiment, attachment, resentment. All of those are emotional energies, psychological energies in our astral body that are transmitted through and transformed in our emotional brain. These two are very important to understand what they are and what they are not. Let's illustrate this with a quick example. Right now, you feel something, and thoughts are emerging, and you have your personality functioning, and you have your body functioning. But can you discriminate between those different components in yourself? Can you see the difference? Most of the time, we don't. Most of the time, our consciousness is so weak and distracted that we just go along with the flow of all the different forces that are inside of us and outside of us without really paying attention to them. What we need to learn is to see the difference between thought and emotion. Even on this point, many of us get very confused. We try to use these different psychological tools in the wrong ways. Our psychological world is completely out of balance. So what happens is, as these energies are flowing in and out of our intellect and emotion, modified by our personality, we become hypnotized. This is where the flower of Narcissus emerges. It isn't a physical flower, it's psychological. It's called Narcissus because it's related with our self, our nature, our mind. That flower is an illusion that hypnotizes us through our personality and our three brains. So our essence, Persephone, becomes entranced. But how does that work? Don't let your mind take you into extremes and think it only happens when you are suddenly faced with your favorite meal, but you're trying to lose weight. Yeah, it happens then, but that's not the only time it happens. And likewise, don't think it only happens when suddenly you realize you've got $1,000 extra and now you can afford to go buy whatever it is you've been dying to buy. And you feel that temptation. Yeah, it happens then, but that's not the only time it happens. It also happens when someone looks at you. Did you realize that? What happens when someone looks at you? Do you see the psychological phenomena that emerges in your mind? So subtle. But there's a whole series of reactions that occur that you don't even think about. They're not necessarily intellectual, but there's an evaluation that happens in you. What are they thinking when they look at me? Is this person judging me? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Am I in danger? Do they lust for me? Or do I lust for them? Do they respect me or not? A whole very complicated but very rapid evaluation happens that we're totally clueless about. Moreover, this is happening thousands of times a day. And this is only one example. The psychological processing that's happening in us is what creates our suffering. You see, when someone looks at us and we're asleep, in other words, our pride is in charge, then we're going to take that experience of the person looking at us and transform it in accordance with pride. So the pride says, do I look good? Do they think I look good? Am I handsome or pretty? Do they think that I'm handsome or pretty? Do they like me or not? And again, this is not intellectual. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the thought comes, but usually it's not. Usually there's such a rapid transformation of forces that we have no awareness of it. This is how significant this sentence is. What it's pointing towards is a radical reevaluation of our psychological habits. Radical. We talk a lot in these lectures about self-observation, self-remembering, meditation, chastity. We have to have all of those factors engaged in our psychological environment. But the reason we have to have them engaged is so we can learn about our three brains. So we can observe and watch the energies that are flowing in us constantly. You see, when that person looks at us in that instant, there's a huge transformation of energy that happens below our awareness. So when someone looks at us and we feel, we just sort of quickly read their glance or their posture or their attitude, and then we assume that we know what they're thinking or feeling. We think, oh, they just glanced at me really quickly. That guy must think I'm ugly. I was talking with a child who has a little crush on a boy. And she said, he wouldn't talk to me. He doesn't like me. And she felt terrible. Now, I'm an adult, so I know a little better. And I know that the boy does like her, and that's why he doesn't talk to her, because he's terrified. But you see, we do that same assumption all the time. We're listening only to what our ego is saying. Her pride was feeling threatened because she was feeling an attraction towards him, a little crush. And there was that doubt, maybe he doesn't feel that way, and so then brings in pride. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe he doesn't like me. Maybe I'm not pretty. And then when he didn't say anything, didn't talk to her, she felt devastated. Not because of him, because of herself. Of course, as a child, she doesn't see that. But we're adults. We don't see it either. This is just one example to give you a short illustration of the subtleties of the three brains. Thought is the intellectual brain, emotion is related with the emotional brain, and movement is related with the body. Movement is further subdivided. The third brain, the brain of movement, is also three aspects: a motor center, an instinctual center, and a sexual center. So if we put these on the body, we see our intellect in our physical brain in the head. We see our emotional center in the chest or solar plexus area around the heart. And the movement brain has the motor center at the top of the spine, the instinctual center at the base of the spine, and the sexual center related with our sexual glands, sexual organs. The center of movement is where we have all of our habits, physically speaking. We have our instinct, such as the sexual instinct, the preservation of life, digestion, the way our nerves function, the way our bodies function. All of this is related with this third brain. In each center, we transform and process energy. So each center is like a little machine. Each one has a certain amount of energy available to it, and it can only process certain kinds of energy. So if we were to, let's say, give them scientific values, we could see that the intellectual brain only processes energy related with the intellect at a certain vibration, at a certain speed. Likewise, the emotional only processes energies related with emotion, and so on with the other centers. Problems emerge for us when we try to use these centers in the wrong way. When we try to communicate with each other without using the right centers, without having equilibrium in our three brains. Simple examples can be very obvious sometimes. You may have a close relationship with a person and yet never be able to get your point across and get so frustrated because you think you're making it so clear and the other person just doesn't get it. And you get more and more riled up. Anybody here can relate to that? Everybody? Okay. Observe yourself when that happens. And also put yourself in the shoes of the other person and pay attention. Because I can tell you what you're going to find is this. One of you is using one brain and the other one is using another brain. This is very common in romantic relationships especially. Let me give you a stereotyped example. The man tends to be too intellectual, the woman too emotional. Not in every case, but this is a common occurrence, right? So the man is trying to solve the problem with reasoning, saying, well, it's logical that A and B equals C. And the woman is saying, but it feels wrong. I don't like it. It doesn't feel right. Emotional. They can't understand each other at all because neither one has their three brains in balance. The man is stuck in his intellect. The woman is stuck in her heart. They can't communicate. They fight. Right? Everybody can relate to that? This is happening with us all the time. What happens gradually over the course of our existences, as we've become more and more entranced with ego, with our pride, with our lust, with our envy, we have built habits and tendencies psychologically in the ego. Likewise, in each lifetime, we build habits and tendencies in the personality. In a given culture, the focus may have been very intellectual. And in another culture, the focus can be very emotional. Right now, in North America and Europe, for example, the focus is extremely intellectual. It's very rare to find any place that really develops the powers of the heart. It's very rare. It's extremely common to find people that overdevelop the intellect. We can see this in our schools. How are our children educated? They are simply forced to stuff their brains with a lot of data and then regurgitate that data a couple times a year, and that's it. They don't really learn things through their emotional brain or through their motor brain. School doesn't really require that. They don't care. Our educational system just wants kids to be able to repeat facts. Do you know who repeats facts? The intellect, not the soul. The intellectual brain can store facts and repeat them. It's like a donkey. It's a machine. And now we have these game shows and all these contests where people who can repeat totally useless facts are considered geniuses, right? They're not geniuses. They just have an intellectual brain that's sharp. That's nice. It's a great quality to have. But at what cost? At what cost? Equilibrium implies many things. You see, when you overdevelop the intellect, you deplete your other centers. We only have a given quantity of energy to use. If, let's say, today I give you 100 units of energy, observe your day. How do you use that quantity of energy? Don't think that you use it smartly. Watch yourself. Watch what you do with it. Watch your behavior. How much of it is spent in repeated habits? Habits are related with the motor brain. For example, we always put our pants on the same leg first, right? We always hold the cup the same way. We always open the door the same way. When we come home, we do the same procedure. When we leave in the morning, we do the same procedure. These are superficial habits. But we have mental habits. We have emotional habits. We have habits in relationships with others and with ourselves. Habits are not conscious. Habits are mechanical. Moreover, what is our job? Let's say we work in a factory. We do the same job every day. Do we do that consciously? Do we consciously take this widget and this whatchamacallit and assemble them and move on down the line? No. We might do it consciously the first 5 or 10 times. But after that, it becomes routine, habit. So we can do it and not even think about it, right? So our brain is off thinking about some TV show or a memory or a craving or desire while our motor brain is doing our job. Habit, habitual, asleep. So how do we use this energy that we have? What's our wisdom in the use of energy? We need to analyze that. We need to know that. Because really, we should be using these 3 brains in balance, in equilibrium, each day. The problem is we have tendencies, we have habits that develop over time, psychologically speaking. Some of us are not what we would call intellectual. Maybe our memory's not so good. We don't really like to study. And we tend to be attracted towards things because of how it makes us feel. Right? So maybe certain types of art or jobs or types of people, they make us feel good, so we like that. And that's what we're attracted towards. But the intellectual part, we don't really want to think about that. We don't really want to use the intellect. So that type of person will tend to overemphasize the emotional aspect and deplete the intellectual. There are other types of people that just like to get in a situation where they can repeat themselves because it gives them security. Some people love those factory kinds of jobs. And they love religions where all they have to do is repeat a certain practice 10 or 15 times a day, and that's it. That's all they have to do. They love that. It gives them security. It gives them a sense of safety. And that type of person is very much in the motor brain, the brain of movement. Why does this matter? Gnosis is about developing a complete human being, not a machine. Our whole society is only interested in creating machines. You see? Big corporations only want us to be consumers. They just want our money and our energy. Governments are the same. They only want us to be cogs in the wheels of the great machine of society. They don't want us to be cognizant of what's really going on. To be conscious, to be self-aware, to be self-reliant. The religions are the same. Religions just want followers, believers, people who won't question, people who just go along, right? We see that everywhere. And we all have that tendency that we just want to fit in. We want to be loved. We want to be liked. We want to be respected. We want to be noticed. to be appreciated. And for that, we want to fit in. So what happens is we all develop a sort of tendency or psychological habit that emerges in us gradually over time. But we're unaware of it. Then when we get a little interest in religion, or maybe we were born into a religion, and we adopt that according to our psychological tendency. And thus, in the world, we find three primary types of spiritual groups. Three primary types of religions. Not in the core sense of where the religion came from, but rather in the sense of what we have made the religions into. There are basically these three paths that we're attracted to for our own idiosyncrasy. The first we can call the path of the fakir. Fakir is a Middle Eastern term that refers to people who perform seemingly magical feats, or feats of great endurance. For example, we've all heard about the Swami lying on a bed of nails. That is a fakir. Or the sadhu, who has had his arm raised towards God for 35 years without lowering it. That is a fakir. Or we've heard about the monk who's been sitting in silent meditation without eating or drinking for months or years. That is a fakir. What we define in this is a person or a religion who is developing willpower through the center of movement. This is a religion or a theory or a belief or a doctrine or a person who believes they can reach God through will. Personally, I've encountered many of these people. Many of those who are great devotees of hatha yoga are really following the path of the fakir, because they think that through physical exercises they can reach spiritual enlightenment. I've met many people who believe and think that by sitting in a meditation posture for extended periods of time, suffering and forcing themselves to stay in that posture, will reach spiritual development. Or by repeating certain mantras or phrases or actions or different practices, spiritual practices. Some say if you do this mantra in this posture 100,000 times, you'll awaken a certain chakra. Or if you do it 100 million times, you will be merged with God. This is not true. What they do develop is willpower, which is good and useful. They develop the brain of movement. They develop a lot of will over sensation, will over the body. But they totally neglect the powers of the heart and the powers of the mind. Completely neglect them. Completely abandon them. So then you have a person with a lot of will, but with no understanding of their emotion or how to use it, and with no understanding of their intellect and how to use it. So that's the first path. The second we can call the path of the monk. And this is just a term used for it. It doesn't mean all monks are like this. We call it the path of the monk because many monks practice a devotional path. A path of belief, of devotion to God. This path of the monk would include all of those devotees of bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is popular in India. and is the path of devotion to God. A bhakti yogi only sings praises of God, always remembers God, and sings the praises of their deity. Maybe the Divine Mother, maybe Krishna, maybe Shiva. And so they sing a lot of songs, they sing mantras, they sing bhajans and aratis, devotional religious songs. We find this in Christianity, in Judaism. We find it in the Pentecostal types who just want to feel that ecstasy of merging with God emotionally. Very common. This type of person has a great deal of what they call faith, but it was really just belief. They believe fervently, which is good. But unfortunately, they neglect the intellect and then neglect the center of movement. This type of person will typically say, I don't need to study the scripture. I have my faith, I have my belief, and that's enough. And they'll say, I don't need to do all these complicated practices. God accepts me because I merge with him in my heart. I love God. Right? We've all encountered this. This is very common. It's in every religion, every group. So the monk is a believer. The third we can call the path of the yogi or the scribe. And of course, this person studies intensely, memorizes scriptures, can quote perfectly from the sacred books, is an expert at debate and applying logic to spiritual concepts. But they abandon the development of the heart. They can be very cold and cruel. They abandon the center of movement. So they have little willpower or self-control. They just have a lot of theories and ideas. Samael Aun Weor called them walking libraries. This type, nowadays, appears to be the most common. This type of person studies a lot and builds very beautiful models of God in their mind, but has no experience of God. And this is because to experience God, to experience the divine, to experience religion is impossible through the intellect. It is possible to have experiences on the path of the monk through the heart or on the path of the fakir through will. It is possible. And that's why we can find fakirs or monks who've had experiences, who've tasted something of a superior realm, who've experienced a Buddha or an angel. But you will never find an intellectual with those experiences. It's impossible. They'll have a lot of ideas. They'll be able to explain all those experiences to you and quote scriptures, but they've never had the experience themselves. So here then is our challenge. Every one of us is one of these three. Every single one of us. We all call ourselves Gnostics. But you only enter into becoming a true Gnostic when you have balanced these three in your everyday life. That is, use your intellect religiously, you use your heart religiously, and your center of movement. Through many years of working with students, we have observed thousands of intellectual Gnostics. We've observed thousands of emotional Gnostics and thousands of Gnostics who use their center of movement. It's very rare to find a student who balances all three. It is very rare. It's not easy. The reason is we come to Gnosis with all of our habits. And because Gnosis unites all three paths and makes a fourth path. We fail to realize that fourth path, and we pick up one of the three. This is also why instructors tend to disagree with each other. Because one instructor is very intellectual, another is very emotional. Another just wants to do a lot of practices and doesn't want to study or believe. They just want to practice. All three are wrong. All three. To be a true Gnostic, you have to unite the paths into the fourth path. That's why this is a fourth way school. This is the path of the balance. Gnosis is a path of equilibrium. But to enter that path is only possible when you have created that equilibrium in yourself. Otherwise, you will never enter it. You cannot enter the path of the balanced way if your own inner house is out of balance. If your psychological state is out of balance. It's impossible. You find Gnosis within. Know thyself. So then our task becomes, how am I out of balance? We have to observe that. How do we practice? How do we use our energy? What is our tendency? What is our habit? And we have to break it. Most of us don't want to. We'll come to Gnosis and we see, wow, there's a lot of information here that I can study with my intellect. A lot. And there's a lot of information here that I can believe in my heart. And that I can use to really connect with God emotionally. A lot of mantras. A lot of beautiful concepts to visualize and imagine in my heart and contemplate those things. And there are hundreds of practices I can do. You see those three? Intellect, emotion, movement. So the person that has that tendency of the fakir comes into Gnosis and starts doing a lot of practices. But they don't like to study. And they don't like to develop the heart. So they do a lot of practice. They may meditate for 8-10 hours a day. They do mantras, they do runes, they do all kinds of esoteric exercises. But if you ask them a question, what are the three brains? What are the three minds? They say, oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not studying that yet. I'm not ready for that. Right? What is Malkut? What is Yasod? They don't know. They don't know. Likewise, for the emotional ones who want to do a lot of mantras, who want to build a big movement and feel connected with everyone else, who want to believe and want to help humanity very sincerely from their heart, really believe in the teaching and really want to help others, but they don't want to study and they don't really practice. Right? We've all seen that. The problem there is they may believe, they may have good intentions, but they don't know the doctrine in the intellect, and they don't know the doctrine in their experience because they don't practice. They are what we would call on the path of the monk. They are not on a Gnostic path. And then we have the yogis, the ones who really deeply comprehend the concept of Gnosis. They memorize the books and the teachings. They can quote at length. And they grasp concepts and can explain them very beautifully. But emotionally, they're cold. Emotionally, they're empty. Their belief is in question, and they suffer from a lot of doubt. Doubt in themselves, doubt in the masters, doubt in the teaching. And that's why the intellect gets so out of hand. They're trying to find faith through the intellect, and you cannot. This is a personal sadness for me because people that I've known and loved have gone that direction. Gone so much into trying to find faith and belief by studying the intellectual part and never developing their heart. And in the end, they become great cynics, very critical, and they become enemies of Christ. Because they never developed something emotional. They never brought the teaching into their heart. They never brought the teaching into their body. And therefore, they could never make the teaching conscious in themselves. You see, that's the goal. On the balanced path, you study intellectually to teach your intellectual aspect, to learn the concepts and the doctrine. You work with the powers of the heart through ritual, through mantra, through practice, through prayer, through meditation. You open your heart. You develop compassion, love, patience, true virtues. All these virtues are in the heart, not the mind. And you develop the powers of movement by perfecting all of the exercises and practices, sexual alchemy, meditation, transmutation, mantric practices, runic practices, many techniques that harmonize the body, that activate the chakras. Only when these three are all in balance with each other can we enter the fourth way. Why is this so important? Because if you don't achieve this, you can never enter the major mysteries. This is the domain of Persephone, as we explained in the previous lecture. Persephone, as a goddess, as a symbol, represents the Divine Mother who tests us in the minor mysteries. The minor mysteries are about establishing equilibrium. It doesn't mean that we have perfected our three brains. And it doesn't mean that we have united with God through the minor mysteries. It means that we have proven that we comprehend how to balance them. To fully balance them, you have to resurrect. You have to die and resurrect. That is a fully equilibrated human being, a resurrected master. Until you've become a resurrected master, you are not fully equilibrated because the ego is still alive. Any ego is disequilibrium in nature. A single ego is enough to create disequilibrium. Every ego has three brains. Every ego has three brains. When we observe ourselves, we watch our three brains. Why? To learn about the ego. To see how our ego works through our three brains. To learn about our tendencies. What I hope this illustrates for you is that we have tendencies that we ignore. Even when we come into Gnosis and become very admirable Gnostic students, we're still bringing our habits, our tendencies. So let me give you a little bit of free advice. Take it for what you will. If you're a person who's very intellectual, stop reading or slow down. If you would read an hour to 2 hours, cut that in half and then meditate and use mantras for an hour to 2 hours. If you're a person who doesn't like to practice, begin. You need that to balance your three brains. If you're a person who only likes to practice, not study, not believe, not do the mantras, not do the prayers, not do all that stuff, but you just want to do practices all the time, slow down. Pick up a book and try. We have to have all three brains in balance. It's necessary. Let's explain a little bit about why. Let's say that you're a person who is attracted towards the emotional aspect of the teaching, which is very beautiful. All about sacrifice for others, about the love of God, about the Divine Mother, about the sacrifices of Christ. And this really inspires your heart. And you love the groups, when the groups come together and everybody's in harmony, and it feels so nice to see all the people relating with each other and helping each other, and you love that. But you don't like studying. And practicing is okay, doing mantras is okay, or prayer is okay. But studying Kabbalah? No way. Too complicated. Don't like that stuff. Too complicated, right? I don't get it, this is what we say. So what's going to be the result? Let's look at that. Let's say you spend 5, 10, or 15, or 20 years doing your mantras, doing your prayers, and not studying, what's going to happen? You'll start to awaken some consciousness. You'll start to have experiences. You won't understand any of them. You will misinterpret everything because you won't have any understanding of how the superior worlds work. Kabbalah, Samael Aun Weor told us specifically, the objective of studying Kabbalah is to learn to speak the language of the internal worlds. If you don't speak that language, you're going to go there and get really confused. And this is why we find many saints, people with a very beautiful aura, a presence of so much love, but who are stupid, who do stupid things and say stupid things because they don't know, they haven't studied, they don't have an intellectual culture. There are many like that in the Gnostic movement. There are many Christians like that, many Hindus like that, many Buddhists like that. They say dumb things without realizing that they're dumb because they haven't studied. They haven't worked on the intellectual aspect. Moreover, they halt their own development. They misinterpret. Let me give you a simple example. I had an experience many years ago when I first came into Gnosis, where I had an experience in the astral plane. And Al Pacino was threatening me very violently. And I was scared. Because he's like a gangster, right? It's like the Godfather coming to take you out. So I was really scared from that. So after I had this experience, I was thinking to myself, man, I have karma with Al Pacino and he hates me? And I was really worried because I lived in a place where I could potentially run into him. Oh man, I'm going to see that guy and he's going to hurt me. So I was really worried about that for a while. But luckily, my instructor was teaching me and helping me and guiding me, and I was studying Kabbalah. Eventually, I started to realize, you know what? That dream was symbolic. That wasn't Al Pacino. That was a symbol. And then later, when I was starting to analyze other experiences I'd had, I realized that symbol of Al Pacino was pointing to a person I was dealing with in my physical life who was acting like that. Who was acting like a gangster. And he was very angry with me, but hiding it. Physically, I couldn't see it. But my being was showing me in the internal worlds, watch out for that guy. He's really mad. Luckily, I got it before things got really out of hand. What that example illustrates was, if I hadn't been studying the Kabbalah, if I hadn't been studying Gnosis, I would have thought, like a lot of people, I have a karma with Al Pacino. He and I must have some relation from past lives. Maybe I knew him or something. I'd start talking like an idiot and saying stupid things like that, which a lot of people say nowadays. We've all heard it. We've all heard such and such as a great master, or I have a karma with this guy and this guy and that guy and this and that's going on. And a lot of nonsense because people misinterpret. They don't understand their own experiences, much less their physical existences. It's super important that we balance these three in ourselves. Otherwise, we will get stuck. So what happens is this. If you're this type of person that's very emotional and wants to develop the emotional qualities, you wind up being dumb. Misinterpreting everything and not understanding everything. We've given many examples in these lectures of how easy it is to misinterpret. You may be a great meditator. You may have great abilities through your heart to project in your astral body. And this is one of the benefits of developing the heart. We've met many students like this. For them, astral projection is easy. Easy. Because they have emotional energy. That's where all their energy is accumulated, is around the heart. That is the energy that lets you use your astral body, which is the emotional body. So for them, it's easy to have experiences. The problem is, when they have experiences, they don't understand them. They don't know how to interpret them because the intellect's not being used. They don't have a study of Kabbalah. They don't know the symbols and the structures and the laws. So they're confused easily. Conversely, the person who's very intellectual, who has read all the astral projection books and has memorized all of them, but doesn't really practice and doesn't work with their heart, can't get out of the body at all. They may have memorized Kabbalah. They can go through the entire tarot deck and tell you the meanings of every single card, right? Or they can quote scriptures. They have a lot of conceptual understanding, but zero power in the heart because they've put everything into the intellect. Don't become that. It is a dead end and very painful. There are people that are in that position but will not admit it. People that get in that position and are instructors but will not admit that they cannot get out of the body. They cannot have experiences. They've not tasted samadhi. They've not experienced God. This is very painful. On the surface, they look like great instructors of any religion, not just Gnosis, but any religion. But inside, they have nothing. No experiences at all. It's very sad. Don't walk that way. Develop your heart and mind in balance. Every day. Not just once a week. Every day. Use them in balance with each other. There are mantras to acquire that. The harmony of mind and heart. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Masi Padme Hum. Very powerful for developing that balance between heart and mind. And then, of course, we have the fakirs. And another example comes to my mind of a man that I know or knew who could meditate in a perfect posture for hours, but would confuse the most basic Kabbalistic concepts in his discourses and had no experiences in the internal worlds. Because all he did was develop a lot of willpower, but ignored his heart and did not develop his intellect. It's very important to master this. So the quote that I started with is, "A perfect equilibrium between personality and essence, the harmonious development of thought, emotion, and movement, and a revolutionary ethics." We've been talking about ethics a lot in recent lectures. And to repeat, ethics are not morals. Ethics are not platitudes that we memorize or rigid norms that we imitate. Real ethics are conscious, cognizant. They come from the conscience. It is to know what is right and wrong and to do what is right. Nobody can tell you that. Nobody can tell you what you should do, who you should marry and who you should not, what job you should have and what job you should not have. The only place you can get that knowledge is from your innermost, not from anyone else. No one can tell you how to live your life but your innermost. So this revolutionary ethic is to awaken your consciousness. It is to learn to listen to God. So this becomes the crux of the whole passage. If we understand our personality and we can keep it subdued, and that is our name, our image, our appearance, our language, our culture, all of that stuff. If we start saying, you know what, this stuff is really pointless, and I'm sick of all this, trying to live up to the standards of my family or my society, I need to live to the standard of my innermost. Period. If you can do that, you can start working with your essence directly, putting the personality in a passive state. Then you start to work with your three brains. If you don't have your personality under control, You cannot work with your three brains. It's impossible. If you're so concerned about your outward appearance, about what your family's going to think about you, what your friends are going to think about you, and all that kind of stuff, or trying to live up to certain standards, this will remain an illusion. It will remain vague. You won't understand this because personality will keep interfering. Essence has to dominate personality. Consciousness has to control personality. That is, you have to be authentic. Not to this time, not to this day and age, not to your family, your heritage, your culture, your city, your country, to God. To your innermost, to your Buddha, to your Divine Mother. You see, you are Persephone, and Demeter is waiting for you. When that domination is present, willpower and consciousness, personality is subdued and becomes passive, then your three brains are more visible. This is a problem that a lot of people have. Even Gnostic students, they don't see the three brains clearly because the personality is always interfering. Make the personality passive. Walk away from all those so-called requirements of your society, of your environment, of your family. It doesn't mean abandon your family. It means reprioritize. Put your innermost first. Put your spiritual well-being first. And then when those three brains become more visible to you and you start to see, wow, I'm really being too intellectual here about this. You see, we're starting to try to make decisions and we start overthinking it. Or we don't want to think about it. We just want to feel our answer, right? What feels right? This is just emotional brain. Or then we try to solve things instinctively. But that's just instinct, animal instinct. You can't solve your problems through the three brains unless the essence is active in using them. This is the issue. If the essence is asleep, who's using the three brains? If you aren't paying attention, if you aren't cognizant, if you aren't awake, who's using your three brains? Your ego. How often are we awake? I mean awake. Cognizant. How often are you fully aware of your body? How often are you aware of your eyes that see, of your heart that's beating, of the sensations of your environment, of the air, of the atmosphere, of your digestion, of your breathing, of the electrical impulses in your brain, of the pumping of your blood, of the rise and fall of emotion, and the trickle of thought? Are you aware of that? Ever? That is self-observation. And amidst that, do you remember God? Do you feel the presence of your innermost, of your Divine Mother, right now? That is self-remembering. If those qualities are not present, you're asleep. And if you're asleep, ego rules this house. Habits, desires, laziness, pride, shame. All of those discursive elements that constitute the myself. You see, Gnosis is not easy. It is not automatic. It is not mechanical. It has to be provoked, continually provoked by will, conscious will, cognizant will, a will of awareness, a will of openness, a will that is relaxed and vibrant. Here's how you do it. In each moment, remember your being. This is so fundamental, but so easy to forget. It's not just to think in your intellect, to have the thought in your mind, God. That is not remembering God. That is a thought. It is not to have a feeling in your heart, God. That is just a feeling. It is also not to forcibly produce a chill in your spine or little goosebumps. God is here. That is just sensation. To remember God is conscious. It is the essence. It is the action of the essence, which is beyond the three brains. As beginners, we all struggle with this part. We're trying to learn self-observation and self-remembering, but we tend to do it from our old mechanical habits. Intellectuals try to do it in the intellect. They're always thinking, I have to observe myself. I have to observe myself. I have to observe myself. That's not self-observation. That's repetition. That's just the mind. The emotional ones are trying to feel self-observation. I feel like I'm observing myself. It feels okay emotionally. Or it feels weird emotionally. That's just emotion. The ones in the center of movement try to manipulate the body and force the body to somehow remember itself. And this is a funny one. I knew a guy that you could tell when he was trying to do it because he'd get this look. Like a very sort of tense look on his face. And all the students around him knew it. So, oh, he's observing himself now. It doesn't work like that. That's just a fakir habit. How do you really observe yourself? You activate your consciousness. It doesn't mean you change your behavior or your thoughts or your mind. You look at them equally. To be observant is to just observe. That's all. It's to just observe. But to do it being aware that you are observing. So become aware of how you're sitting. Feel everything there is to feel about sitting. Feel your whole body. And just observe it. You don't have to change it. You don't have to modify anything. You just become aware of that. It's an act of observation. You don't have to think about your body. You don't have to have an emotion about, does sitting this way, do I like it or not like it? Or does it feel good or bad? Or is it, do I love this or do I hate this? It's not emotional. You're just sitting. Neither is it dependent on any sensation that's good or bad. You're just sitting and you're observing how you sit. And now also observe the thoughts that trickle, any emotions that might be trickling, and retain that awareness. And underneath all of it, don't forget. What gives you the ability to be this and do this and experience this is your innermost. Your inner being, who's always there. Feel that. It's not an emotional feeling. It's not an intellectual thing. It isn't a sensation in the body. It is something that you are cognizant of. You see, to do that takes effort, right? You have to work at it. And you're just sitting still. Now, try to do it when you're in a conversation with someone. It's a lot harder. The instant you get out of this lecture, all your habits are going to reemerge. Worrying about what people think. How do they see you? How do I look okay? Do I have a booger in my nose? Right? Always worried about so many things, trying to impress. And we get into a conversation, we totally forget ourselves. We totally forget our innermost. We totally forget our Divine Mother. And we're just in the thread of the conversation. Maybe it's an intellectual conversation. Maybe it's an emotional conversation. Maybe it's instinctive. What is an instinctive conversation? Something that's indulging in instinctual behaviors. Sarcasm, lust, anger, pride. We all have friends that we start talking. Maybe we talk in a very intellectual way, debating a little bit or comparing ideas and enjoying that discussion of ideas. Some of us talk emotionally. Oh, I felt this, and he felt that, and very emotional qualities, right? And the rest of the time, very low. Instinctive stuff. Talking about bestial qualities, bestial topics. The same with the television that we watch, the movies, the books, the magazines, all that stuff. We forget ourselves. We don't pay attention to what we're doing with our three brains. So all that energy is being utilized in negative ways. What happens is this. When you start to really learn to sustain your self-remembering and self-awareness and observe your three brains, you start to save energy. A lot of energy. You see, where in the past you might have engaged in habitual intellectual topics, conversing with others, talking, being on the internet, researching things, looking up things, comparing, or you're emotional, indulging in watching sports, for example, is a very emotional and instinctive activity. People who love those romantic movies, very sentimental stories, abuse the emotional center. We have these habits. What happens is we waste that energy because we're asleep, we're not really aware of ourselves, or we don't care. And all that energy gets wasted. Why do we do it? Because when all that energy is wasted, we relax. Right? What do you feel like at the end of the day when you've spent that 100 units of energy I gave you a little while ago? You're exhausted, right? You go home and you're like, pfft. And then you just want to space out. Sit in front of the TV and click channels or the internet and click around. Spaced out. Right? Why? You have no energy. You wasted it all. Through your intellect, through your heart, through your motor center. Wasted. And then you get home and you're like, yeah, now I got to meditate. With what? Where is your energy or fuel for meditation? Or for transmutation? Or for mantras? Where is it? That's why, one of the reasons why, morning is a great time to do your spiritual practices. You wake up fresh, you have all your energy. And then you direct your energy in that way. First thing. Excellent. Excellent process. At the end of the day, it's wasted because you didn't observe yourself, you didn't remember yourself, and you engaged in mechanical habits in your three brains. All the energy's gone. So with what energy are you going to reach self-realization? If each day you're coming home exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically, where is the energy to practice dream yoga overnight? Where is the energy to meditate and comprehend your ego, which you should be doing every night? Where is the energy to unite with God? There is none. So where is your progress? Where is your spiritual life? We have to be practical. We have to be hard on ourselves and really see our mistakes. If we don't have any energy at the end of the day to do our practice, we're fooling ourselves. It means that we're wasting it all day long. When you start to observe yourself, to manage your three brains, and to develop equilibrium, you start saving energy. You start to realize when that friend comes around that loves to get in those intellectual conversations with you, you say, you know what? I can talk to my friend, but let me do it consciously. Let me not waste my energy. Or when that friend comes around who loves to gossip, oh, you know what I heard? Let me tell you what I heard. You're not going to believe it. And your heart goes, I want to know. Tell me. And then you observe yourself and you say, you know what? I'm not going to waste my energy on this. But here's the hard one. When that show is coming on TV, that show you love to watch, you know the one. I'm not going to name it because you'll be embarrassed. What do you do when you watch that show? You waste energy. You get all involved in the characters or in the story or the events of the show, and all your heart energy and all your intellectual energy is wasted. After the show, you're like, that was good. Right? All the energy's gone. What'd you do with it? You splurged it. You squandered it. What we're talking about here is conservation of energy. Transmutation is to take energy and transform it into something else. We always talk about sexual transmutation. But what we're really trying to perform is a work of alchemy, which is a transmutation of the mind, a transmutation of the soul. How will you do that if there's no energy? You see, the fourth type of person is a type of person who has learned to balance their three brains to save energy and transform it. To harness all these forces and to utilize them in a conscious way for spiritual benefit. To put it another way, if you're wasting all your emotional energy in sentimentality, in attachments, in watching violent sports or violent movies or romantic soap operas and all that kind of stuff, and you're depleting it, and you know you're depleting it, with what energy are you going to build an astral body? Because the astral body is built from the energy of the heart. And if you're wasting all your intellectual energy in theories and conversations, in debates, in concepts, how are you going to build a mental body if all that energy is being wasted in stupid conversations? And if you're wasting all your physical energy by being stressed out all the time, by running around and doing dumb things like shopping all the time and working 26 hours out of a 24-hour day, constantly running, never sitting still, so that your body is completely depleted every day, how are you going to raise the energies in the physical body and the vital body? How will you conquer those two serpents of the major mysteries? You cannot. There's no energy. This is why Persephone, related to the minor mysteries, says, you have to dominate the beast. Your body, your three brains. Only when you've managed to prove that you know how to control your three brains, to save energy, to put them all in balance and have cognizant control. This is not 24 hours a day. Again, it's to know how to do it and show you can do it. The more you do it, the better. But when you've demonstrated that, then your Divine Mother says, okay, let's take you to the next step. Because then you'll have enough energy to enter those major mysteries. If you don't have any energy, there's no point. There's nothing to transform. There's nothing to transmute. So in this process, you face a lot of ordeals. A lot of tests. It's difficult. It's very challenging. And everyone's tested according to their own idiosyncrasy. We don't receive the same tests in the same ways. We get the tests according to our psychological habits. The intellectuals are tested intellectually to see if they can work with that aspect and save energy in that aspect. The intellectuals are tested emotionally to see if they can use their heart. And they are tested in the center of movement to see if they know how to properly use their body. See, we're tested in all three brains, but according to our idiosyncrasy. An emotional person is tested in different ways. An instinctual or motor type person is tested in their own ways. But all of us are tested. So it becomes our responsibility to learn about our three brains and learn how to balance them. Look into yourself and see. What are your habits, and break them. I'm not talking about the habit of that you always put the towel on a certain side of the towel rack. It's not the habit I'm talking about. If you want to break that one, that's great, but it's not going to bring you closer to God. The habits you need to break are psychological habits. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you act. You have to go against it. This is the hardest part. We feel that our habits are good, that our habits are who we are. And let me tell you a little secret. That thing that you think is your greatest virtue, it is the reason you are suffering. That is a painful thing to see. That quality in yourself that you think makes you so special and such a good person, such an upright person, is your worst defect. We cannot see it. We don't want to see it. And I'll give you a second clue, equally distasteful. Samael Aun Weor said in The Great Rebellion this beautiful statement, which really can help you a lot in this. Listen carefully. He said this: any point of contention that we have with another person is because we have that quality. And we don't like to see it in others. So if you've got somebody at work that really irritates you and you say, God, that guy is so arrogant. He drives me crazy. You know why? Because you are arrogant and you don't want to see it. And he is like a mirror to you. So when you feel that strong repulsion towards somebody or a certain quality, look at yourself and keep looking. You won't see it the first time. But if you keep looking, you will see it. And at first, you'll be devastated. You'll feel horrible. But then if you persist, if you don't run away from the facts of your mind, you will come to discover the greatest joy of the real Gnostic. The single greatest joy is when you discover a defect. You see, the joy, we have joy when we see God, when we talk with God. And we have joy when we have experiences in the internal worlds. These are beautiful things. And we have joy when more people come to the teachings. And when new schools open and new instructors teach. These are all joyful occurrences. But they are nothing compared to really finding a defect that you've never seen before in yourself. It sounds strange, right? Our pride is not happy. And it doesn't sound joyful to us because we only know pride. We don't know our essence. But when you're centered in your essence, in other words, when you have psychological equilibrium, you have a center of gravity in your essence. And when you see that defect, you feel an unimaginable joy. Because that is an aspect of your cage. And now that you see it, you can kill it. Not overnight. But now that you see the enemy, you can vanquish him. If you don't see him, you're just trapped and suffering. So this is the work. I love this little passage because it embraces all of that. Everything is in this. What is a fundamental education? It is the education of the consciousness. The consciousness can only be educated as to what is right and wrong if we control our personality, if we awaken our essence, and if we cognizantly balance thought, emotion, and movement, and we act from revolutionary ethics, conscience. When that phrase is actualized in our day-to-day life, we become different. Very different. Life changes. Do you have any questions?
get home, then I remember that I have to, remember myself and my inner being. Lately, what I have done is just put an alarm on myself, like every 2 hours, remember that inner being. But is that right? Is that, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a big challenge, is how to remember yourself when you go to work, to live your daily life, right? It doesn't mean that you quit your job and go find an easier job, because you will be the same person, whether in that job or a new job. You'll have the same habits, the same tendencies, right? You will be the same, even if your circumstances are a little different. So you have to learn to modify yourself, to modify what is inside instead of what is outside. You can use those tricks, like an alarm clock. I've known people who've written little notes to themselves and hidden them around their office. So they'll open a drawer and it'll say, "Remember yourself." That might work once. And it might work in a year when you look in the drawer again a year later. But it's not going to work every day. Right? Those little tricks are okay, but you're just modifying the external circumstances. You're not modifying the internal cause. To modify the internal cause is very hard. It's not easy to do, and it won't happen overnight. You have to make effort, and make consistent effort, and keep trying. This is very similar to when we learn to meditate. When we sit to learn to meditate, we start our meditation, we've got this great intention. I'm going to meditate now for 10 minutes. And we make about 5 or 10 seconds into it, and then we're dreaming. And then the 10 minutes go by, and we're like, I totally forgot I was supposed to be meditating. Right? And we feel bad. But you keep trying. Then you get to the point where you go 2 or 3 minutes, and then you remember, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be meditating, so let me concentrate again. And then a few seconds go by, and you fall asleep again. And then another 2 or 3 minutes go by, and then, oh, I got to be meditating. So you catch yourself repeatedly, right? This is what happens during the day. The more effort you make, the more often you catch it. Don't feel defeated. This is wonderful, to catch yourself. The Buddha said, if you meditate, fall asleep 1,000 times, and catch yourself 1,000 times, that was a perfect meditation, a beautiful meditation, because you caught yourself. You remembered, and you restored your consciousness. But if you didn't remember at all, you need to work harder, right? Eventually, gradually, the stronger your consciousness becomes, it doesn't forget. And then you're able to remain more cognizant for longer periods. But then the challenges change. It just becomes something different, more subtle. Still hard, but more subtle. We can talk about that in another lecture. The point is, for now, keep trying, keep trying. It takes a lot of willpower. A lot. There's a chart in, I don't have one here, in all the Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, when you come into the first room, into the antechamber, there's always a big painting. And if you're in the dorms, they'll have smaller ones around. And the painting is of the steps of concentration, 9 stages of tranquil abiding, it's called. The very first step shows a monk with a rope and an axe. And next to him is a huge blazing fire. That symbolizes those 2 implements, the rope and the axe, are the tools of mindfulness and observation. The fire is how much intensity you have to put into your willpower to be cognizant, to be aware of yourself. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of willpower. An enormous blaze is next to him. But if you look at the painting, it's interesting. As it winds up towards higher states of concentration, the flame gets smaller. Until at the top, there's no flame. And the reason is, as he ascends that path, developing more cognizance, it takes less effort. The consciousness becomes trained. The mind becomes trained. The 3 brains become trained. It becomes easier to remain self-aware. Then the challenges are different after that. So that's basically the point. Keep making the effort to be mindful. A lot of effort. You have to sacrifice other things. That's what it comes down to. If you only have, let's say, earlier I said if you have 100 units of energy, right, in the morning, okay, probably most of us have 10 because we wake up tired. Because the mind is so out of control, we're wasting energy all night also. So let's say you have those 10 units of energy. Well, start cutting out things where you waste energy. Things that do not help you spiritually and that may harm you spiritually. Some examples: stop listening to bad music. Stop watching bad television or movies. Stop reading harmful materials, books, the internet, websites, all that kind of stuff. Stop. Anything where you waste energy. Sometimes it means you have to take a break from friends, from social events, from family. It may mean you need to change habits that you have had for your whole life. Do it. Your very soul is at stake. It's not a game. You need energy to awaken consciousness. You need energy to manage your three brains. You need energy to be cognizant. And if you're wasting it, that's your choice. So evaluate your life. Look to see what you can change. Find places where you can save energy. No matter which one of our tendencies happens to be, whether we're intellectual or emotional or more of a motor type, we waste energy in all three brains. All of us. We just tend to do it in one way more than another. Part of it also is restraining our senses. When you're going to work and you see a billboard or you see an advertisement or you see a person dressed in skimpy clothes, don't look. You have a choice. When that show's coming on that's got material that's a little questionable, shut it off. Turn off the TV. Go for a walk. Spend time with your kids. Do something useful with your time. Don't waste your time. It's these things that seem insignificant that add up rapidly. One of the sutras says, never underestimate the insignificance of any act. That's a scripture that says that. It's very important because each little act has an impact greater than the original action. Remember we talked about karma. That little act of looking at that web page or looking at that magazine cover or looking at that girl or that boy has an impact. A lot of energy is spent there. And it creates something. But what? Is it creating your soul? Or is it creating an ego? This is the kind of radical ethics. See here the master says, a revolutionary ethic. The revolution is not against the outside world. It is against your mind. It is against your habits, your tendencies. You have to revolt against yourself and let your being guide you. That's the other part I was intending on talking about, but we've gone a little too long. All of us want guidance from God, right? We're all praying, God, please guide me. But how can God guide you when, first of all, your three brains are filled with garbage, things that you've accumulated all day long that shouldn't be in there, and second of all, your three brains are depleted of energy. It's like if you have a radio that's not plugged in, how can you listen to the radio? There's no energy to power the radio. Right? If there's no energy in your intellect or your emotion or your body, if there's no energy in your consciousness, what can God do? God respects the law. If you have an open mind that has energy and is active, if you have an open heart that has energy and is active, and if your body is relaxed and has energy, God can give you a lot. A lot. But we have to put ourselves in that position. We have to create those circumstances. Any other question?
I remember reading a book about description of the path of the yogi that includes things like meditation on like a Zen koan that like subverts the intellect, but it's
That's right. Yeah, I gave a very simplified presentation of these three paths just to make the distinctions clear, that they're related with the three brains. But the fact is, in any of these three paths, fakir, monk, or yogi, they have all the practices. You know, a fakir has his scripture. I mean, he studies, he has his theory and his doctrine. It's not like he doesn't have an idea of what he's doing. If you go to a fakir who's just trying to develop willpower, he can give you a whole exposition of why he's doing it, and it sounds reasonable. Nonetheless, he's not developing a full use of his intellect or his heart. The same is true of the monk and the yogi. Yogis who are developing just in the intellect, they might do mantras and meditation and practice, but not in the right way, not in balance. So it's a good point. It's true. Any other questions? Then there's the personality, which is a whole other thing.
Personality, you have two aspects, right, that you mentioned. One is the perfect equilibrium, which the personality is in the service of the essence. And another aspect that is kind of false personality, which is at the service of the ego.
That's right.
So how can you create a perfect equilibrium?
The perfect equilibrium is when the personality is under the control of the essence. The personality is necessary. It's how we relate to each other. It's where we have our skills of language, our skills of culture. The way we all relate to each other is through personality. If the personality wasn't there, we wouldn't be able to relate with each other. It would be confusing. We wouldn't have the language skills. We wouldn't have the body language. We wouldn't have all the ways that we know to relate, to talk, right, to be with each other. The difference is that the ego uses the personality and makes the personality big and fat. Personality becomes this grotesque thing. And we all worship big personalities, right? Rock stars, movie stars, leaders of this and that, politicians, celebrities. They all have big personalities, very dominating personalities. But when we deal with somebody who doesn't have that, whose personality is passive and under control of essence, they have a completely different feeling. For example, Samael Aun Weor. Totally different. He has a strong solar personality, which is something else. We have lunar personality. Or another master, like say the Dalai Lama, for example. Very powerful presence, but solar, not lunar. So personality is always there. Even the highest masters have personality, but it's a solar personality that's being controlled by the spirit. Makes sense? That's what you're saying, right? Same thing. Any other question? No? It's just you guys today, nobody back there. Equilibrium, to state it in a simple way, is to have our moment-to-moment activities in the consciousness. That is to have equilibrium. In the Revolution of the Dialectic, the Master Samael talks about a permanent center of gravity or a permanent center of consciousness. That is equilibrium. It's when, instead of being centered in our intellect or centered in our heart or centered in the motor, instinctive, or sexual centers, we are centered in the essence. And so when we face challenges, we face situations, we are centered in the essence. We're managing our three brains. We don't get swept away by emotion or swept away by conceptual things or swept away by instinct. We are conscious, cognizant. And that's the platform from which you can transform impressions. And that's another level. Right? But without that center of gravity, you can't do the work. Any questions? Last chance. Yeah.
So, what about the superior intellectual emotional state?
It's a good question. No, please.
I was just wondering, sometimes you get information and you feel is of a superior nature. Is that just only happens when for a brief moment you have the three centers in balance? The intellectual, emotional, sexual center?
Not necessarily. It depends. We talked about 5 centers today, right? The 3 related to the body and then the emotional and intellectual. But there are two more, superior intellect and superior emotion. These centers are, of course, related with the heart and the brain, but they transmit a superior type of force, a superior type of energy, which is related with the being. Any one of us can receive influences or impressions from those superior centers. For example, you might have a vision, right? You might have a awakened conscious experience out of your body. You might have some kind of powerful experience, spiritual experience with your innermost, even while in your physical body. And those are related to those superior centers. But because we tend to waste so much energy and we don't have control over our three brains, those are generally accidents or something provoked by the being to push us. Those two superior centers become fully active when we've created the soul. When we have the solar astral body and solar mental body. That's when those superior centers are functioning in their proper state. So when we meditate, we're looking to have experiences or get information from those centers, and we can have it. But it's not easy for us. We don't have the energy, we don't have the equilibrium, and we may not have those bodies internally. Was there a question about that? No. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. To follow up with that, we have trouble balancing our three centers. That was the whole lecture. So with the three lower centers, how also do you, I guess, go with the flow of what the superior intellectual center is asking you and the superior emotional center is asking you when we have trouble with the lower aspects of it, let alone when God's telling you, like, okay, I want you to do this, and you think,
Well, this is the whole challenge. It's exactly that. Samael gave a great lecture that partly explains it. He gave a lecture called The Taste of Life and the Taste of the Work. And what that illustrates is that we have to get to know the flavor of our psychological experiences and our spiritual experiences. And this is something that takes a long process of study. Not merely study in the intellect, but study in the heart and study in the body. It's part of the reason we need to be in a balanced form in our practice. As an example, I was talking about yogis or monks who may have experiences of samadhi, right? And because they do so much practice that they easily have samadhi, and they go out and they talk with the gods and they have experiences with elemental forces of nature. And so they think that they're enlightened. They interpret those experiences as if they are liberated. And then they come back to the body and they say, hey, everybody, I'm a master now. Right? But they're wrong. It's because they're lacking study of the higher aspects, and lacking study of Kabbalah specifically, or the metaphysics of those experiences. So the short answer is, in order for you to accurately interpret your experiences, you need a lot of study, you need a lot of patience, and you need a lot of self-criticism. You cannot take any experience at face value. Kabbalah is essential on this point. The whole purpose of Kabbalah is to be able to interpret our experiences. That's why we study it. It's not just have a theory, it's to be able to interpret accurately what we see and experience internally and physically. I'll give you an example. If I can think of a good one. Well, we had the example of the other instructor who someone came to him in the internal worlds and says, oh, you're Moses. We know you're Moses. Right? Remember that story? And of course, from study, he knows he's not Moses. And Moses is symbolic. But if we hadn't studied, we'd misinterpret. So it's the same case when we have information that comes to us through the superior intellect or superior emotional center. We have to know how to discriminate them and understand them in context. We have to understand the symbolism. That's all Kabbalistic. Yes?
You, in the past, talked about you're ready for the bus, but you run like hell.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a society that the real world is really the real world, and then what we're talking about here
Mm.
To find that balance of paying your bills and getting your life together, and then coming out of it and putting this into effect, it's a very, very fine line that you could really waver off that line. And again, you know, you talk about the balance. So, I mean, I don't take the bus, but I know I run like hell to everything I do. So,
Yeah. It's a challenge. But that's part of the beauty of the Gnostic teaching. It doesn't demand that you change your physical circumstances and go and run and hide in the woods or a monastery. It's the path of the fourth way, which any person in any circumstance can utilize and change their circumstances for the better. So the simple answer is, do what you're doing, but do it consciously. That's all. Keep doing what you're doing, but do it from your heart and do it consciously. We all need jobs, right? We all work. We all have a lot of responsibilities with family, with kids, with our different activities that we're involved in. It doesn't mean that we have to stop all those things. By no means. We need all that. All of that is our karma. All of that is where we're going to learn about ourselves. All of that is our mirror in which we can see who we really are. So we do what we have to do. We eliminate what we don't have to do. And we learn how to do our activities better. Simply that. Right? Be a better person in day-to-day life. If you have to have a job, do your job and do it from your heart. Turn your job into a spiritual practice. Turn your family life into a spiritual exercise. So when you go to work, you take it as your Gnostic path. Instead of taking it as just a way to get money. It isn't. It's a way for you to learn about yourself. It is a way for you to contribute to your community, to your family, to your environment, to the people around you. And a job is necessary in this day and age. We need it. We need to be able to survive. It's the only way we can survive right now. So we go, we do our job, but we do it as a spiritual practice. And in every action, in every interaction with others, in every moment, we seek to extract what is useful from that, to make it conscious, to make it of benefit to others. And we get rid of what is not useful. Discard it. Not easy, but it can be done. I give you my personal testimony of that. I've had jobs that are very difficult. And I suffered, and I still suffer. But thanks to Samael and the help that I get from the Gnostic teachings, I've learned how to transform, whether easy tasks or difficult tasks. I don't do it perfectly, but I'm learning. And it can be done. That's what I can tell you. It can be done. Whether you're a janitor or a president, right? That doesn't matter. What matters is to be conscious. Do what you do consciously. Act from your conscience. If you have a conflict with your job, if it bothers your conscience, then change it. But if you can do your job in good conscience, then do it. And do it to benefit your coworkers and the clients you serve. Do it as a service to humanity. Then that becomes a beautiful sacrifice, right? Instead of just doing it to get money, you're doing it because you can sincerely do something to benefit other people, to help them. Then your job becomes a great vehicle for transformation. The same with their family. We all have challenging family karma. But if we can take that as an opportunity to serve, instead of just a source of suffering, if we can turn our job and our family and our community responsibilities into opportunities to serve each other, then each one of those things becomes a very powerful tool to transform our mind and to help transform the lives of people around us. It's just a matter of shifting our attitude, right? Not easy to do, but we can do it. And that's by training. That's why this tradition is called mind training. In Tibetan, it's called lojong. It's where we train ourselves to be better people. But that training doesn't come overnight. Patience, persistence, and learning a little bit more each day. Any final question?
You're cutting into our meditation time.
Oh, excuse me. All right, thank you.
The presentation of this lecture was made possible by donations from listeners like you. Help Gnostic Radio to help others. Make a donation by visiting gnosticradio.org. For questions and deeper understanding of this lecture, we invite you to explore the wide variety of resources available on our websites. Thank you for your support. May all beings be happy.